Good evening, y'all.
Good evening.
All right, or as we say in the mountains, yuns. Good evening, yuns. Yeah. Well, it's good to be here with y'all. If I can be here down here, maybe I can be down here too. Yeah, it's been a few years, but y'all have a beautiful church here. It is very pretty. I'm gone almost, I'd say over half the year. I'm gone visiting places and sharing with folks. And I have a true passion to help folks with their health. I worked in regular health for 20 years. And I grew up on a farm. Any of y'all grew up on a farm? I grew up on a dairy farm, and then went beef cattle. And Dad always told me, he said, son, he says, I don't care what you do. He said, you can dig ditches if you want to. But when you have a family, you got to take care of your wife, your children. You got to put food on the table and a roof on top. You can do whatever you want to. He says you can dig ditches if you want to. One day, I'd had enough of healthcare. And we weren't getting to root cause. And I came home and told Mary Lou, I says, I don't care if I dig ditches. I'm going to change. And I went to a lifestyle center. They had a position open as director. And we reversed diabetes. We reversed cardiovascular disease many times. Diabetes, my first 20 years, zero. Not one patient. And I remember when I told corporate I was leaving to a place that could reverse diabetes, they said, Walt, you're crazy. And then I said, we can even improve type 1 diabetes. And then corporate said, you're stupid. It can't be done. You're going to ruin your reputation in the healthcare community. Well, guess what? I went to a clinic. We had over a 98% reversal rate of type 2 diabetes. Diabetes is simple to reverse. It's easier to reverse than toenail fungus. But I've been doing this now, lifestyle health now for 22 years. And lifestyle health, the difference is I'm just no country boy. And so I just use horse sense. Y'all know what horse sense is, common sense. So let's say that I have a piece of sandpaper and I'm rubbing my arm. And I can say this, Donna, she come up from just a county over from where I live. And Donna comes, she says, oh, honey, why don't you put you some medicine on there? And I say, okay, put you some medicine on, because I've rubbed the hide off of it. And she puts medicine on there and then she leaves and I go to rubbing it again. And then she puts more medicine on it. And then when she leaves, I go to rubbing again. Is it going to heal? Not till I stop the root cause. And what I find in healthcare is we are more effective if we find root cause and change the cause and have the body run like it's supposed to. Many times disease goes away. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow night specifically. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Perfect. So what we're going to talk about tonight is how do you build or make an effective lifestyle program? It's the first of the year. It's a great time to do it. Number one New Year's resolution is what?
Lose weight.
We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Yeah. How to lose weight. Yeah. So how to develop an effective lifestyle plan. About 23 years ago, the guys at work, they told me, Walt, you're going to have to take a statin drug. My cholesterol was 288. My dad was from East Tennessee. My granddaddy was East Tennessee. My great-granddaddy from East Tennessee. And they all had heart problems. And the doc said, well, the guys at work, I worked in regular healthcare at the time, they said, you're going to have to take a statin drug. And I said, no, I mean, if you work in it, you know the problems with it, you know? And I said, there's some challenges. Let me try something else. So for hypertension, you go on what's called a no added salt diet. And that helps to lower blood pressure. So I went on a no added cholesterol diet. And my cholesterol went from 288 to 104. And what I found out, I was East Tennessee predisposed, not genetically predisposed. See, in East Tennessee, we fry everything. Maters, taters, ice cream, pickles. When I was in Africa, tell an African we fry ice cream there. They don't understand that. I mean, we fry pigs, chickens, okra, poke. We fry it. Is that right, Donald?
Yeah.
Dental's been there. You live there. And if we don't fry it, we pour oil in it. And we just don't eat a healthy diet. And yes, there's lifestyle. There's no questions. Genetics has a role in health. But through epigenetics, and y'all have heard about epigenetics, through epigenetics, you can even change what's even genetics by lifestyle. But a lot of it is just lifestyle. I go into the school system and I teach little kids, kindergarten up through 8th grade, and then go into the high school. But you can have, how old is she? 4. Okay. How old are you? 8. Okay. I could ask either one of these young ones, if your granddaddy smokes and he gets lung cancer, and your daddy smokes and he gets lung cancer, and you smoke and you get lung cancer, I'll ask these youngins and they'll say, it's because you smoke, mister. It's not because of genetics. We don't get lung cancer because of genetics. It's because you're smoking. And so lifestyle really makes a difference. And I'd like to take a look at that tonight. Am I totally discrediting genetics? No, because there is genetic issues. We'd be a fool to say no. But a major issue is lifestyle. So what are the problems out there? Do you have any of these guys? They're definitely out there. Depression, I don't see on there. WHO says that our number one diagnosis in America is stress. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. But WHO says that depression is soon to surpass stress and be our number one diagnosis in America. Depression's huge. It really is. And so what do we do for these things? What's the cost? Denzel and I, we were in class together. We took business together in college and actually studied together even. And so we have that mind that thinks, what's the financial impact? What's going on here? Well, let's look. HIV/AIDS, we look at the 11 costliest diseases in the United States, 24 billion. Hyperlipidemia, $34.5 billion. AIDS is 24 billion. Kidney disease, 38.1 billion. There's a program I'll talk about maybe tomorrow that Duke University came up with. And I can have a person come in with stage 4 renal disease, and it's usually gone in 3 months. I didn't come up with it. This doctor, super smart doctor over at Duke University came up with it. But guess when he came up with it? 1934. And Duke's been doing it over there. It works. It does. Mental disorders, 57.5 billion. Arthritis, 74.4 billion. COP and asthma. Now, notice I don't have COPD and asthma together because about 5-6 years ago, we used to have 3 diagnoses within COPD. It was asthma, chronic bronchitis, and emphysema. They pulled asthma out about 5-6 years ago. And so that's separate now. COPD is now, y'all know what O2 sat is? Most people learned O2 sat during COVID. You got a call the other night. I'm also a fireman. Where's our fireman? Up there. Also a fireman. Got a call. Guys having difficulty breathing, having seizures. O2 sat was 41. Would that concern you? Absolutely. O2 sat 41. And so wife says he has COPD. And so I wanted to find out, is it emphysema? Is it chronic bronchitis? It was chronic bronchitis. But you know what? We got it up in just a few minutes, so we had it up in the 70s. So we were able to bring it right on up. Obesity, 147 billion. Cancer, 157 billion. Dementia, 159 billion. Diabetes, 176 billion. And I just mentioned we have over a 98% reversal rate of type 2 diabetes. It's amazing. I was in Rwanda. And you know how sometimes one branch of the government doesn't know what the other branches of the government's doing? Well, it happened. And so I went in to talk to government leaders on lifestyle health for 4 days. Now, are any of y'all from the South Side, Donna? You're it? Well, I get up to talk, and it's very important. Denzel knows this very well. If you have to translate, you know this. What's the translation rate? Well, it's about a 1 to 5 in Kinyarwanda. So that means for every minute you talk, they got to say 5 minutes worth of talking. So you don't get much done. So I asked him, I said, y'all know English? Oh, yes, we know English. Now we're talking to ambassadors, Supreme Court justice, ministers of different agencies, top business people for the country. Oh, yes, we know English. Good. So I get up there. I'm supposed to speak for 4 days, and I think I'm going to cruise. I can speak English. I get up. I did not get one sentence out. And this ambassador stands up, walks up on the platform. I stop, whispers in my ear, turn off the Southern.
Oh.
Yes, sir, I can do that. So I start talking real clear as I know how to do. At the end of that meeting, he says, we'll be translating for the rest of the meetings. We can't understand you. They know that King's English. So I'm over there talking, I'm teaching, and I do a 2-week program where we do a lifestyle program, and we have all these government leaders coming through and other people coming through, and in walks the second in command for health in the country. He's the assistant to the minister of health. And then with him is the director of the World Health Organization for that country. It's kind of like, anybody work in healthcare? It's kind of like JACO coming in, or even more so CMS coming in, or we used to call HICPA. What are you doing here? Well, your government knows I'm here, but I want to see all your paperwork. So he looked at all my paperwork. I do a lot of paperwork with morning vitals, and we did labs at the beginning and what all. He interviewed all the people, and he comes up and he said, President Paul, who's president of the country, he wants to make Rwanda Singapore of Africa by 30. And he's well on his way. COVID did mess that up a little bit, but anyway, timing-wise. So sick people just don't make money for a country. Sick employees don't make money for a country, and sick people. So he said he wanted his people healthy. So he comes in and he says, "You're not going back to America." Well, they can do that over there. They got machine guns and shotguns, and they're serious people. And I'm thinking, I says, "Well, you're going to have to talk to my wife about that." And he kind of chuckled, but really not. He says, we have been trying to figure out how to address what they call non-communicable diseases. We've been using all kinds of medications. We've been throwing all kinds of money at it. It is not working. And today we have found a program that works. See, they understood this thing right here, money. What they were just throwing out. And you can't just throw money away to build a country, just like you can't throw money away to build a business. And so diabetes, 174 billion, heart disease, 193.4 billion. Heart disease is the top killer in America. It's also the top killer of firefighters also. Let's see, here's a percentage here. Chronic liver disease, cirrhosis, septicemia, chronic kidney disease, influenza, pneumonia, diabetes, Alzheimer's, stroke, chronic lung disease, cancer, heart disease. Just looking at costs here. What do we do? How do we get to root cause? Top 2 root causes. Number 1 is appetite. Appetite's huge. It is not the only thing, but as I rank order and when I work with people, appetite is number 1. Number 2, being sedentary. Well, that doctor over at Duke University who put on this program, he got to looking. Do you remember when we were in elementary school? When we were in elementary school, we had morning recess. We had recess after dinner. Now, where I'm from, dinner's the noon meal. We do breakfast, dinner, supper. Do y'all do that on farms here? Okay. Farm work. That's farm language. Okay. So we did recess after dinner. We did recess in the afternoon. And then we went home, played, and did chores. We were active. And so this doctor at Duke University found, adults need to do that too. We need to be active at least 4 times a day. If you went to his program at Duke University, I was telling Denzel earlier, you literally went to the gym 4 times a day and spent an hour at the gym. Now, a lot of sick people went to Duke, and not everybody could exercise a full hour, but you were up and down as you could that hour 4 different times a day. Exercise is huge. It's huge. Anybody, what kind of farming did y'all do? Cows? Dairy. Okay. Who's ever grown beef cattle? Anybody grown beef cattle? Okay. You have, yeah. Do you know how you make veal real tender? You stove them up. You put them in a little pen and you don't let them move. That's how you make veal. Well, we're making veal out of people. People don't move. They just sit there at a desk, sit there, whatever, and they're not getting moving. And moving is so important. Working this muscle and every other muscle. So sedentariness. Get up and change one's lifestyle is the prescription that I recommend. So in healthcare, did you ever learn API in healthcare? Assess, plan, implement, evaluate. It's a process we use. Walk into a patient situation real quick. We assess, we make a plan, we implement it, and then we evaluate, how that plan's working. Well, we were doing that when I was working in regular healthcare, but we were having some problems as we made teams. The docs and different ones, they come off on this idea, and we say, well, it's got to be all within the mission. And so we put M on there. MAPI. What's your mission? Number 2 is you want to make an assessment. 2, you want to make a plan. 4, implement, and then evaluate. So what's your mission? Whether therefore you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God, God tells us. Should that be like a mission? Now, I took finance from a professor at UT. And this guy used to work for a place called Coca-Cola. Y'all know Coca-Cola? And they have a place there in Chattanooga. And every year, Coca-Cola's board gets together and they relook at what is their mission for Coca-Cola. Now, let's say you come up with a great idea and you work out on the floor. It's a great idea. But if it doesn't fall within Coca-Cola's corporate mission, it doesn't happen. Now, you can tell you're a supervisor and you can go up the chain and you can get to the board and they can say, well, she's got a great idea. Do we want to make that change, that 25-year out mission? She's got a great idea. So that will incorporate within that mission. They adjust it a little bit. But if you worked in corporate, you don't do anything outside the mission statement. You agree? Do you have a mission statement? Is a mission statement good for you to have? I think it is. Ultimately, our mission is what? Eternity with Christ. That's ultimately. But then Coca-Cola made their 5-3-2-1 plan based on that 25-year mission. So you want to look at your mission. Let's look here. Okay. The next thing is you want to do a history. A health history, age, occupation, work schedule, list your health concerns. What are the health problems that you have? And so as you go home and you're saying, okay, I want to be healthier. I want to develop a healthy lifestyle program. I encourage you to take a look at what is your occupation. You can't fix your age. That's set. But can you do something about an occupation? I have people that come in and they work 3rd shift. Do you think that's a problem? Or could be a problem? Yes, we need nurses on 3rd shift. And they say, so what do you do about that? Let the nurses who don't care work 3rd shift. You go work 1st shift where you get your sleep during the day. But there's a huge importance. Let's say you work in an occupation that, just is a very unhealthy occupation with chemicals and whatever. Next one, what's your work schedule? What's your list your health concerns? You want to identify all those. And then, this is kind of odd. I'd sit down with these ladies from New York City. And I'd say, how many bowel movements you have a day? And they'd look at me like, what are you? Is it important? A couple of years ago, I had this lady come in, and she's, very trim, very corporate looking secretary type lady. And I said, can I help you? She says, I'm having some problems with going to the bathroom. I said, okay, how often do you go? She says, once every 3 weeks. Once every 3 weeks. I've had folks every 4 weeks. They weren't too good a shape. But it's not uncommon for a person to come in and tell me, I don't ask, do you have normal bowel movements anymore? I'll say, how often do you have bowel movements? Well, so I gave this lady some fiber, and that's all it was, fiber. She was doing water fine, but she just was eating a processed diet. Does processed food have much fiber? Does dairy have fiber? Does meat have fiber? And so we just upped her fiber. She came back 2 weeks later, and she says, this does not work. I can no longer do this. And I said, well, what's the problem? She says, I'm just going way too much. And I said, how often do you go? She says, 3 times a day. And I said, how many meals do you eat a day? She says, 3. I said, you're perfect. She says, I don't have time for that. And she left. I never saw her again. She said, do you have anything else? If you look at time management, here's a lady who's only spending her time at that process once every 21 days. And now she's doing it 3 times 21. She's wasting her time, she thinks. Bowel movements are important. They are. How much should you have? As many meals as you eat, you should have that many bowel movements. Is what our gastroenterologists tell us today. Do you have pain? And what's the location? What's the pain? 0 to 10. I'd have people come to me at the Lifestyle Center with pain. They'd leave and they'd say, I still have pain. Y'all's program doesn't work. Well, I learned, I know that person's doing better. So I started doing what we kind of did in PT. We'd measure their pain. We'd get a barometer out and how much could they range that finger or that arm or that knee, and then 0 to 10, what's your pain level? And when they all, we check it every couple of days and we could see the trending. And yes, they may have come in with a pain level of 7 and they left with a pain level of 2. Did they leave with pain? Yes. But was it improved? Yes. And so I like measuring. I think it's just, how do you know what you're doing if you don't measure it? How do you know what's in the bank if you don't measure it? You measure what's in the bank. So look if you have pain. Where's the location of that pain? And a 0 to 10, what is it? And as you change your lifestyle, is it improving? If it's not improving, then we need to relook at what you're doing. It ain't working. So we've got to change it and do something different. The other is take a look at stress, 0 to 10. What's your stress level? We talked about stress. You probably don't find too many people that have 0 stress. That's just life. And if we're going to be alive, there's going to be some stressors out there. Want to look at depression? We talked about depression a moment ago. And if you have a question about depression, ask the spouse. Do they have depression? Sometimes I'll ask a husband and wife come in and I'm asking the husband something and the wife's over here going, they're answering just exactly opposite of what the husband's doing. Ask the spouse what's going on. They kind of know what's going on. They kind of watch us. Mary Louise knows what's going on with me. Are your hormones messed up? Yes, males, but especially females. And if it's a depression issue, Mary Lou taught me, look at hormones. And I find that's true, especially if they're in that menopausal age. Check to see if it really is a hormonal issue that's causing that depression. But hormones are big. And how's your hormones? Are you having hormone problems? Because hormone issues can affect. I had a guy come in last week, and his testosterone was immeasurable. They couldn't measure it in the labs. Well, that's a problem. I have guys come in their mid to late 20s, and they've got a testosterone level of 150 and 175. They should be 750. Now I got a guy who comes in, he's 78 or 79. How old is Dave? 78, 79 years old. And his is over 750. Why? eats a good diet. He doesn't have belly fat. He goes to sleep at night. He doesn't do estrogen stuff, and he exercises, and his testosterone is over 100, 750, and he's almost 80 years old. No, almost. I'm sorry. He's almost, what is it, Dane? Almost 70 years old. Yeah, 68. Nutrition, breakfast. When do you eat breakfast? Now, is it important when you eat breakfast? It is. So this morning, I got on an airplane in Knoxville. And let's say that pilot said, we just don't do fuel in Knoxville. We just don't like the fuel here. But when we get to Charlotte, we'll get a little bit. But when we land up in Twin Cities, we'll fill up. Are you going to get on that airplane? But do we do that to ourselves sometimes? See, you need food in the morning to get through the morning. And you need food at noon to get through the afternoon. Now, you don't have to tank up with food to sleep. And actually, as you look at what's going on physiologically, when you eat breakfast, and Dr. Koop is the doctor who figured this out. He's like the world's expert on metabolism. And Koop found that when you eat breakfast, it increases metabolism. You burn calories. When you eat dinner, the noon meal, it increases metabolism. You burn calories. And around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Koop found your metabolism starts shutting off. Why? God's shutting it off so you can go to sleep at night. And so when you eat supper, it doesn't increase metabolism and you don't burn those calories off as effectively. And Koop actually, his really obese patients, he only had them eat breakfast. But the rest of them he worked with, they only ate breakfast and they only ate dinner, the noon meal. Another problem, have you ever heard of intermittent fasting? Well, there's a problem with that. I like intermittent fasting, but they've just got it upside down because most intermittent fasting skip breakfast, but eat dinner and they eat supper. Well, did you know that when you do not eat breakfast, it's within 2 hours of awaking, you increase your risk of a stroke and a heart attack by 150% based on the platelets? There's a really good book I encourage y'all to read. It's by a guy by the name of Neil Nedley. Neil Nedley. He wrote a book called Proof Positive. And you'll learn a lot of these little jewels in there, the research that he did. And so if you're going to eat, you want to eat breakfast. And then you want to eat dinner. And if you do have to have something for supper, eat light. Because you're just not going to burn it off right. It's just how it works. Physiology. So when do you eat breakfast? What do you normally eat for breakfast? And I have people say, yeah, I do breakfast. I run into Hardee's and I get me a biscuit. That's breakfast. And a cup of coffee. Well, that's not breakfast. And so is it a good, healthy breakfast? Dinner, the noon meal, when do you eat it? What do you normally eat? Supper, when do you eat it? What do you normally eat? And do you eat between meals? But Walt, I have diabetes. I've got to eat in between meals, my doctor told me. So I went to the clinic. It's Lifestyle Center. And I got there and they were only doing breakfast and dinner. And they learned it from this doctor down at UG Pine, Dr. Agatha Thrash. And I said, I was the director and I told these doctors, I said, listen, you're going to have to start doing breakfast, mid-morning snack, dinner, mid-afternoon snack, supper, and an HS snack. Isn't that what they do in healthcare? You got breakfast, dinner, supper, you got your morning snack, your afternoon snack, and an HS snack. That's what we did when I worked in healthcare. And they asked me 2 questions. First question, why? It's the standard of practice. It's what the American Dietetic Association recommends you to do. And then they asked me a second question, and I walked out of the room. They said, how many diabetes patients you reverse where you come from? Now, how many did I tell you in the first 20 years of my career we reversed? 0. Proof's in the pudding, y'all. And so you want to take a look. Do you eat between meals? Does that affect us? It does. Are there any kinds of foods that you're allergic to? What are foods that folks are allergic to? Pardon? Wheat chews. Yes. Peanuts. Dairy's huge. Yes.
Shellfish.
Pardon?
Shellfish.
Shellfish. That's another big one. Yes. What? Eggs. Okay. When I took nutrition from Cornell University, how many of y'all watch Forks Over Knives? T. Conley Campbell was my professor. And what kind of farm did I tell you I grew up on? Dairy farm. And Dr. Campbell taught us at Cornell that dairy was the most significant chemical carcinogen ever discovered. Cornell University. Now, it wasn't just Cornell. He did some research with another little junior school over in England called Cambridge University. Cambridge and Cornell University found that dairy is the most significant chemical carcinogen ever discovered. They found that it's the most allergenic of all the foods. They found that that dairy increases the risk of type 1 diabetes by 1,100%. Dairy increases the risk of type 1 diabetes by 1,100%. And I learned from a guy over in Milton Crane. Who remembers Milton Crane? Y'all remember Milton Crane? He was at Loma Linda. He was a researcher there. He's a medical doctor and a researcher. And Dr. Crane told me back years ago, he said, Walt, number one cause of type 1 diabetes is dairy. He says, you got to get rid of dairy. So there are foods that folks are allergic to. Why are people allergic to wheat? Each year I go up to Middle River. Who knows where Middle River is? I go to Middle River. You from up there? I go up there every year. And I can go down the road and the wheat is only about this tall. And there's a fellow who will carry me. And we can go by and he says, that one used Roundup, that one didn't use Roundup, that one used Roundup, that one didn't use Roundup. The wheat in America has 42 chromosomes. We've super hybridized it. The wheat in the EU, it's illegal to go above 16 chromosomes. It's illegal to use Roundup. And as we are super hybridizing the wheat, as we're using, who grows a garden? What do you grow? Kale? What?
Kale.
Okay.
Broccoli.
Okay. So let's say you got some kale growing and you tell your hubby, tomorrow I'm going to go pick me a mess of kale. Now, you know what a mess is. Your mama speaks Southern, so you know what a mess is. A bunch of it. And so I'm going to go pick me a mess of kale. And he goes, oh, no problem. I'm going to spray it Roundup. And he goes out there and sprays it with Roundup. You going to feed it to the youngins? But we do that with our wheat. So there's reasons. Dr. Agatha Thrash told me, she says, Walt, she says, one cracker will kick on psoriasis, eczema, rosacea, and arthritis for up to 2.5 months. Just one cracker or a bite of birthday cake. Exercise. Can you describe your exercise program? You don't ask somebody to do your exercise. I remember I asked my nurses, are you exercising? Yeah, I push the med cart. That's not enough. What type of exercise? What's the time and duration of your exercise program? Water? How much water do you drink every day? I have people tell me I don't do water. What do you do? Well, they don't. I haven't had this in a while, but when I moved back to East Tennessee back 19 years ago, it was very common moonshine. That's how they got their water. No, you can't count your moonshine. Coffee, I still get that one. I get it in coffee. But did you know they tell us now that for every cup of coffee that has caffeine, you have to drink 6 cups of water to make up for the dehydration and the effects of that 1 cup of coffee? So how much water do you drink every day? Do you drink soft drinks? If so, how often do you drink soft drinks? And so many people tell me that they just don't do water. They'll do Mountain Dew. I had a guy not long ago, he had health issues, and I said, how much water do you drink? He said, I don't do water. And I said, what do you drink? He says, Mountain Dew. Now, does anybody know where Mountain Dew was originated? Knoxville, Tennessee, Mountain Dew from the Smoky Mountains. I said, how much Mountain Dew do you do? And he says, 3 liters a day. 3 liters a day. No wonder he had diabetes. Do you drink milk? If so, how often? How much? Do you drink tea? How much? How often? Do you drink coffee? So how much? How often? We're trying to make an assessment of what that person's doing. It's just like if your car is broke down or not running well and you take it to a good mechanic, he wants to run and see how everything's working like it's supposed to. Or let's go back to the farm. If you got a tractor and it's having some challenges, you want to go through a list of things and see if what needs to be working is working. Just like our granddaddy and daddy taught us. Sunshine. How much sunshine do you get every day? Sunshine important? It's very important. It is. Do people want to, are y'all prone to having challenges in the wintertime? You are. Do people get SAD here? There's this army in Africa. They got SAD. Now, Africa is not like Minnesota. I've been to Africa. There's plenty of sunshine. But what happened was the whole army got SAD. And what happened is they came up with a new uniform policy. And the new uniform policy said they had to wear sunglasses when they went outside. That was part of the uniform. And then some bright fellow said, wait a minute, they're not getting ultraviolet into the eyes. And so they made them take the sunglasses off. And guess what happened? The SAD went away. A seasonal affective disorder. See, what happens is as ultraviolet light comes through the eyes, it stimulates the pineal gland to convert tryptophan, which you had in your flaxseed this morning. It turns the tryptophan into what? Serotonin. Sunshine is very important. It's very important for another problem out there today. And what's that? Vitamin D. Vitamin D is a huge issue out there. And the lab work says 30 to 100. And I was so happy. Someone came in earlier this week, and her doctor told her that she needed to have at least 70, not 30. And I said, I agree. I've got a good friend, Dr. Khanna. He's a neurologist, and he tells every one of his patients, he specializes in brain function. He says he does not want them less than 60 for brain function. If you want a good immune system, you want 80 to 100. If you want to address osteopenia, osteoporosis, you want 90 to 100. Vitamin D is very important. Sunshine is a big part of it. There's a number of things on sunshine. Temperance, making the right decisions. You use tobacco. How often? How much? Is tobacco, alcohol, illicit drugs, can that cause problems? It sure can. I worked an overdose this week. His 7-year-old daughter found him 6 o'clock Monday or Tuesday morning. It's sad. It's sad. But yes, tobacco has its effects on us physiologically. Alcohol has its effects physiologically. Illicit drugs has its effects physiologically. And people say, Walt, it's my body. I can do whatever I want to. But is that what the Bible says? Who's our body belong to? 1 Corinthians 6 says it belongs to Christ because he bought it. It don't belong to us. We're just a caregiver of it. We just take care of it. And that wife was just a ball. I tried so hard. He wouldn't listen to me. And she just kept going over and over. Now what does her kids have to deal with? What does she have to deal with? The guy was only 30 years old. 30 years old. So it's not just what it does to that person physiologically, but what does it do to the family? What does alcohol do to the family? Do you watch TV? If so, how often do you, and how much? Have y'all done Scott Retzmuth here? That would be a great program to do. Battle of the Mind, and I think he does one, Battle of the Brain also. Great program. It really is. Do you use computers? If so, how much and how often? Fresh air? Do you get fresh air? Do you have diaphragmatic breathing, or do you breathe like a chihuahua? There's a lot of folks who breathe like a chihuahua. They're just small, just breathing up, but they don't have good diaphragmatic breathing like a little child has. Rest. What time do you go to bed? What time do you go to sleep? Is that always the same? It can be much different. Quite a disparity sometimes. What time do you get up? What's the average hours of sleep you get? What's the quality of sleep? And if it is poor, why? What's some reasons for poor sleep? Pardon? Kids. Yes, absolutely. What's some other problems, men? 6, 7 times a night? Prostate issues? Ladies, what's some problems? Worrying about the kids? Maybe older kids. They might even be married. Does mama still worry about kids when they're married? Once you're a mama, you're always a mama. Once you're a dad, you're always a dad. What's the quality of sleep? Are you waking up? See, we need something called REM sleep. Are we sleeping through that time frame? And most important, trusting God. I work with a lot of people. I had a girl come in. It's been 2 years ago right now. Right now, 2 years ago. Mary Lou was down in Birmingham staying with my youngest son for a while. And this girl came in from Sevier County. She looked like a whooped dog. I mean, like a whooped dog. And I said, can I help you? She said, the ER told me to come talk to you, emergency room. She had plumb cut out meth, and she was going through withdrawals. ER told her they didn't deal with stuff like that, and to come over and see me. So I sat down with her and started talking to her and getting the history, what we've been doing here. And I got right here. I said, you go to church? She says, I can't go to church. Why can't you go to church? She says, church is only a place for perfect people. I ain't perfect. Is that true? Had Satan told her a lie? Yes, he had. And so we were talking about this earlier, about talking with people about spiritual needs. So what did happen out of that? We're talking about how to come off meth. It turned into a Bible study. We started talking to a guy by the name of Paul. What did Paul say about sin? He said he is a chief sinner. And we talked about this guy called David. And I said, you killed anybody yet? She says, no. I said, this guy I murdered somebody and murdered him for his wife and then stole his wife. You murdered anybody? She says, no. I said, you can go to church. Church is a hospital for sinners. We're all sinners, y'all. Are we not? Now, yes, we're not supposed to just sit there and not make a change, but we still have our challenges. Church is important. Do you spend time in personal study with God? Or do you just believe in God? I have folks that don't even believe in God. And then I have people that believe in God, but that's it. But that's a start. It's better than a person who don't believe in it. So what do we do with this information? And yes, I've got all kinds of long forms you can do, but let's just talk horse sense here. What do you do? What's the first one we started with? Pardon? Prayers, yeah, that is where you start. Prayer, absolutely. What heals? Only God. It's true, only God does healing. But of the items I mentioned up here, of things to start looking at, what was the first one I looked at? What was that number one item that I put up there? Pardon? No, okay, the next one. Appetite. Yes, age was the first one. Yes. Appetite. So what can we do nutritionally to be healthier? Are there foods that can cause us to be unhealthy? Denzel understands the bottom line. Rolf taught us 2 lines. Richards taught us 2 lines is the bottom line. They're our accounting teachers. The bottom line to health is what's in the blood and the flow of the blood. Perfect health is perfect circulation. See, what's in the blood? Is there bad things that can be in the blood that can cause us health problems? There can be. We talked about tobacco, alcohol, illicit drugs, toxins. There's all kinds of stuff that can be there. Stress can even produce hormones that are bad to be in the blood. But you need what needs to be in the blood there. You've got fats, proteins, carbohydrates. Then you have vitamins, which are a catalyst that makes the fats, proteins, and carbohydrates work. But then you've got to have the minerals, which is a catalyst, to kick on the vitamins, which is a catalyst to make the fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Cornell University looked at that. How many of y'all have watched Forks Over Knives? This is a dairy story. T. Colin Campbell told us in class. He says, I went into that study, the China study, to prove that we need more dairy and we need more milk. And he says, I believed it. He got Cambridge to join in. He got a university over in China to join in. The Dairy Association joined in. The meat people joined in. The beef people. Cornell joined in and said, yes, we need more meat and more dairy. And so as he's doing the research, he found that the numbers were different. Not exactly what he was taught. And remember when we went to school and took stats? Probably the biggest thing I learned from statistics was you can't trust statistics because you can make them do whatever you want to. And so Campbell taught us, he says, what do I do with this? I've got the support of the dairy industry financially. I have the support of the meat industry, beef industry financially. Is that important in research? Who's funding you? Many times who's funding it determines the outcomes. What do I do? The more he looked, he saw that actually the meat and the dairy actually caused people to die quicker, not live longer, as his hypothesis. And parents, listen to this. This is important. This is what changed T. Colin's mind. And it's because of this we have a term called plant-based. Campbell's the one who coined the name plant-based. So Campbell's doing the research and he's trying to figure out what to do. Does he change these numbers? And y'all know what a mind's eye is? You know, something you can see back happened years ago? Well, can you ever sometimes hear something that you heard years ago? Campbell told us in class, he said, I could hear my daddy telling me on the dairy farm, Colin never lied. Colin never lied. He said, it is because of that, what I heard, what my daddy taught me on the dairy farm, told me over and over, is the reason I stood up and said, let's tell the truth. Isn't that cool? Is that something we as parents and grandparents need to be strong and tell our kids and grandkids, never lie? Just like T. Colin Campbell's daddy told him, never lie. And it turned out that the best diet that Campbell found is called a plant-based diet. That's vegetables, fruits, grains, and nuts. So how do we do that as we work with people? So when I do a program, I like having people do a fast, a water fast. It's amazing how it works. Did y'all do water fast down there? Some places do and some places don't. When I go to Africa, every person fasts for 3 days. Some choose 5 days. And let me tell you what, the food sure tastes good when you start eating. But when you do a water fast, it detoxes the body. And there's also a mental thing. Is a fast biblical? It is. Yeah. Queen Esther, did she fast? How many days? 3 days. Didn't kill him, did it? No. So doing a water fast really physiologically can help. There's a there's a physician at Vanderbilt. Y'all know where y'all heard of Vanderbilt? Y'all got Mayo here. We got Vanderbilt down there. And she's very strong on having her patients fast. There's a benefit, and it's biblical. And then I have folks do a juice program to juice. How many of y'all have watched the movie? It's a documentary out of Australia on juicing. It's called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. It's a good one. It is. He encourages people to juice for 60 days. Now, and you say, but Walt, that's not, your heart needs protein and your body needs protein. Well, there's this school down in Birmingham, North Carolina called University of Alabama at Birmingham, UAB. And they've got one of the best cardiac centers in the Southeast. If you go to UAB and you're in Plum, y'all know what Plum is? Do they know, Donna, do they know what Plum is? Okay, Plum means total. If you're in total, Plum, heart failure, see, the second major expenditure that your heart does in its beating process is digesting food. That's why a cardiac patient who's significantly in cardiac failure, they tell them not to eat big meals, eat little meals. Well, these doctors who are called the advanced cardiac team, the advanced cardiac team down at Duke, if you go in there and you're just totally plumb awful, and cardiac wise, they'll put you on a juice diet for 70 days. That is all you do for 70 days. See, when you eat food with fiber, it takes as much vital force to digest that food as it does to go down to the gym. That's a lot of energy that's wasted for digestion that you could be putting towards healing. And it can take on average 2.5 hours to 5 hours to digest that meal, depending on what you're eating. So if you juice, it's in the blood within 10 to 20 minutes, on average 15 minutes, it's in the blood. And you net more energy. It doesn't cause the challenge on the heart. And there's obviously plenty of nutrition and protein in that juice, or UAB wouldn't be doing it. But juicing is really good. And I encourage folks to, fast for a few days and then juice. 7 days, 21 days, 60 days, pray. Ask God how long you need to juice. But juicing is amazing, especially if you have something with autoimmune disease. It is the best attack that I have found on autoimmune disease is to have that person juice for 60 days. And how do you do it? Watch the movie, but you can do 16 ounces 3 times a day. But it's amazing. You know that girl I talked about that she came in, just looked like a whoop dog? She didn't have no money. She had lost her job. She had 2 twins that were 10 months old. She was single mama. She was living with her mama. She didn't have any money at all. And I said, and I learned this from a guy called Doug Batchelor. He says, if you ain't got a juicer, just drink V8 juice. And he probably learned that from Danny Vieira, his buddy Danny Vieira. I asked her, I said, ma'am, can you go to the dollar store and get V8 juice? Can you afford that? She says, I can get my mama to help me with that. I said, good. That's what I want you to do for the next week. And we did some other stuff, and I gave her some stuff. But the biggest thing is she needed that nutrition. She needed to clean out that body. She needed that juicing. She came back a week later, and I had 2 girls working in the store at that time, and both of them did not know it was her when she walked in. She didn't look like a whoop dog. Totally looked like a whole different lady. So, but juicing, if you can borrow a juicer from somebody at church, or if you can get a juicer somewhere, it works well. And then from juicing, I like eating raw. You can eat raw for breakfast. Who's watched the movie? Let's see here. Simply Raw. Simply Raw. It's a physician, Dr. Cousins. He's out in Arizona. He used to eat raw for breakfast, raw for dinner, raw for supper. Just raw for 30 days. Very, very effective. It really is. And then after raw, I go to the Duke diet. And the Duke diet, that's Dr. Kempner's diet at at Duke University. If you went to Duke University, they'd only charge you about $13,000 for the first visit, and plus a motel room. And then the second visits, third visits, each quarter after, it's about half that much in motel room. And this is all it is. Y'all can do this. It's 3 servings of fruit. And a serving is each apple, orange, pear, or a thing that's little like blueberries, strawberries, raspberries. It's a half a cup. That's a serving. 3 servings of fruit and 1 cup of brown rice. Now, if you went to Duke, you could just do the brown rice. That's all. Now, when Mary Lou makes brown rice, she'll add in, for folks when we do programs, she'll add a little cilantro. She'll add in a little scallions, green onions, and a little bit of turmeric, and it makes it taste a little bit better. But if you went to Duke, it's only brown rice. That's breakfast. 3 servings of fruit, 1 cup of brown rice. Who knows John McDougall? Y'all heard of John McDougall? McDougall says the rice diet, Duke's program, it'll fix anything. It is the best cardiac diet in the world. It's amazing how well it works. For the noon meal, they do a nice big old salad, raw vegetable salad, but no dressing, no oil, no salt, no cheese, no meat. You can squeeze some lemon juice on there at Duke, but sometimes you got to negotiate with people, and especially men on this issue. And that is, I'll say, well, do you like salsa? Have your wife fix you up a mess of salsa that doesn't have salt in it and put you some salsa. Well, I can do that and put you some salsa on it. And a cup of brown rice. See, brown rice is the protein that Dr. Kempner at Duke came up with. Plus, brown rice has something called brown rice bran, like wheat bran. It has brown rice bran. It's super, super effective in helping cardiac issues. For supper, you repeat breakfast, 3 fruit and a cup of brown rice. Now, if you have diabetes, it is best that you don't do supper. According to from Dr. Agatha to numerous folks, we find if we fast breakfast, break fast, don't eat supper to breakfast, supper to breakfast, but if we do from the noon meal, dinner to breakfast, you reverse the diabetes much faster. And you go, but what? Don't you have to have all those meals? No, you don't. So that's what we do nutrition. So we keep people on the Duke diet until several things. Until they have, if they're a diabetic, till they have a normal A1C, that's 5.6 or less. They have a glucose of less than 100, so somewhere between 70 and 99. They have a normal blood pressure, and all of this without medication. A number of years ago, my dad called me, and he was living in Nashville. And he said, well, my cardiologist told me I'm only going to live 2 months, the longest 3 months. So I got in the car and I went to Nashville, and I put Dad on this diet. And 3 fruit, cup of brown rice for breakfast, salad, cup of brown rice with that. And then for supper, 3 fruit and a cup of brown rice. Dad lived just 1 month shy of 6 years. Dad got COVID and died. Or he would have kept on going on this diet. Now I asked Dad, now Dad had, his EF was, his ejection fraction when he first was 20, and he got it up to 30. Wasn't where I wanted it, 55, 60. So he stayed on that diet. My brother works at Vanderbilt, and he says, Walt, he says, the only reason Dad stayed alive is that food you got him on from Duke. And I asked Dad numerous times throughout this time, I said, Dad, is that diet not boring? He says, oh, yes, boring. He says, but I get to see my kids. I get to see my grandkids, and I get to see my great-grandkids. He said, that's far worth more than me enjoying biscuits and gravy and whatever else we eat in the South. So the brown rice diet, you can live on it for a while. I met a lady at Duke that she'd lost 200 pounds on that program working at Duke. Going through it at Duke. And you don't lose 200 pounds in 3 months, 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years, 2.5, 3 years. You got to lose it slowly. And she stayed on that Duke diet the whole time. And so that's the diet I have folks do. And you can either do it progressively like that, or you can get up in the morning and say, what I want for breakfast. I think I'll drink some juice for breakfast. What I want for dinner, I think I'll do the Duke diet for dinner. What I'm going to do for supper, I think I'm going to fast for supper. You can just interchange them. But then once you're where you belong health-wise, you're at your ideal body weight. That's another one in there. We have folks stay on it until they're at their ideal body weight. And then you go to the Cornell diet. So I go from Duke University to Cornell University. Great research on both of those. Kempner's program at Duke there's so much research on that one. T. Colin Campbell and the China study, major research on that one. Mary Lou and I have been on that diet, the Cornell diet now for 23 years. And it's just, all we did was drop. I quit eating meat when I was 16. When you get a sick cow, you don't just go and bury it. One in the mountains is kind of hard digging. It's hard enough to dig a hole for a fence post, much less for a cow in the mountains with all them rocks. And if daddy couldn't fix them, granddaddy couldn't fix them, the vet couldn't fix them, you found a stockyard opening and you sold them. Well, at 16, I was a stockyard and I saw this old cow come through and the auctioneer had her do a 360. And, you learned how a cow looks when she walks in. Look at her eyes, look at her head drop, look at her gait. You can tell if she's a sick cow or not. And it's obvious she's a sick cow. She does 360 and there's this huge tumor sticking out behind her left shoulder. About like this, about that big around, about that cancer. And I got to thinking, that steak I like? That blood runs through that steak, through that cancer tumor, back through that steak, back through the cancer. And see, we had dairy cattle, so my mom and grandmother wouldn't let us kill our own cows. And so we'd go to Winn-Dixie to buy our meat or some place. So how do you know she wasn't at Winn-Dixie? When you went next time to Winn-Dixie, she could have been over there. And there you go eating that cancer. So I plumb quit eating meat at 16, but I didn't give up dairy until I was almost 40. But I tell you, my health significantly improved. That's all you're giving up, those two. You still got plenty of fruit, plenty of vegetable, nuts, seeds, grains, legumes. There's plenty of food. And if you don't know how to cook that way, y'all do classes on that, don't you? It's not a problem. So that's what we do for the nutrition. For the exercise, Duke University has their patients, as I said, exercise 4 times a day, and I encourage the same. Now, for diabetes, I'd notice, I'd meet my patients at 6 in the morning, and they would come in and would sit down, and let's say it's a 180, 190. I have them do a power walk for 30 minutes. They come back, and it'd be 120, maybe 130. So I told a buddy of mine who's a professor at Loma Linda Medical School that, and he said, that's interesting. 2 years later, I saw him ASI when we were in Michigan. And what was that town in Michigan we did?
Grand Rapids.
Yeah, Grand Rapids. And we were in the convention hall and exhibit hall. And he walked up to me and he says, Walt, you know what you told me a couple years ago, 2 years ago? And on exercise, I said, yes. He said, we did some research at Loma Linda. And he said, we found that just a 20-minute power walk lowers the blood sugar more than 1 shot of insulin. A 20-minute power walk lowers the blood sugar more than 1 shot of insulin. So Duke University was having these folks walk 4 times a day. It's like 4 shots of insulin. Which would you rather do? 4 shots of insulin or not that many, but walk 4 times a day or have to take insulin shots. But if you can exercise 4 times a day, it significantly makes a difference. At least exercise. Exercise is huge. Water. I'm working on another degree right now. I'll be finished shortly. And a year ago, we bought a bunch of lab stuff and we were studying, doing all kinds of lab stuff. And one of the things we were looking at was hydration. And so the professor had us monitor our labs for a week for hydration. And every one of us were dehydrated in the class. The next week, he says, I want those. And see, University of California said from a 5-year-old has to have a half a gallon of water to run that brain. And we're bigger than when we were 5 years old. So from 5 years old to 128 pounds is a half a gallon of water to sit on the couch. But if you're athletic, if you're exercising, you need even more. Now, as a firefighter, I don't know what y'all state does, but in Tennessee, the fire academy tells us we have to drink a gallon of water a day in the event that we go into a house fire today, proactively. So what he had us do from, obviously not 5, but from 128 pounds less, it was how much? Half gallon. Over how much? 128 pounds. It was body weight divided by 2. That's just sit on the couch. If you're working outside and garden and whatever, you need even more. But he said, just do that. We did that for a week. Guess what? We improved, but still most everybody in the class was dehydrated. The third week, he told us something about a guy just down the road from us in Oak Ridge. The guy's name was Einstein. Well, Einstein had a buddy who was another physicist, another genius physicist. And he found that when we drink more than 3 to 4 ounces of water or at a given time, it goes into free flow. We just urinate it off. It's like pouring a quart into this pint. It's going to overflow. So how many times do we get, we hadn't drank anything, we just chug it. We chugged that glass, we chugged this, whatever. And so what he had us do that week was this. 3 to 4 times every half hour based on if we were smaller or bigger. Every half hour, 3 to 4 ounces of water. Now, this is interesting. He said, except 15 minutes before you eat, while you eat, an hour after you eat. Well, you know why that is? Because it dilutes the digestive juices. And actually, when you drink in a meal, when you take fluids, what happens is you have to get rid of those, you digest those fluids first. And they actually take out enzymes and stuff that needs to be there to digest the food. So it actually messes with digestion when you drink with meals. And he understood that as a physicist. So that third week, guess how many of us had perfect hydration? Every one of us. Because we just took 3 to 4 sips every half hour. We still looked at body weight divided by 2 if we were over 128 pounds, and we made sure we got that amount in what we were doing. But it makes a huge difference. And hydration is tremendous for health. So first one we looked at was what? Appetite, nutrition. Second one was what? Pardon? Sedentariness, exercise. The third one was water. And the next one's sunshine. We need sunshine. And up in this area, do y'all use those lights that Nedley uses up here? Those full spectrum lights? They're really good. Dr. Nedley, you can go to his website, and because y'all don't have a lot, you're more north, there can be that seasonal affective disorder. Neil has a light that you can put that's a full spectrum light as you're reading your Bible in the mornings or as you're sitting there, working or at the desk. And it helps as it goes through the eyes. It helps to stimulate the pineal gland to convert the tryptophan to serotonin. And that's very important. But sunshine is very important. The other thing I'll look at is sleep. Sleep is huge. There's several major components of sleep. We know that right now Harvard University is saying at least 7.5, but their research keeps coming up with 8. I expect Harvard to go with 8 hours pretty soon. The other thing is, how many of y'all know what the lymphatic system is? Okay. Well, when Donna and I took A&P, we did not know that the brain had a lymphatic system. We didn't know that till around 2013. But it does. Actually, when we looked at the lymphatic system, the brain was just white because we didn't know that it had a lymphatic system. But it does. It's called the glymphatic system. And from about 9 o'clock at night to 10 o'clock, the brain does a deep clean. A deep cleaning. Does your brain need clean? Then from 10 o'clock to midnight, it does a thorough clean and it flushes the brain. And if you're not asleep, you ain't flushing the toilet. And it's important to flush the brain and clean the brain. So number one, we need at least 7.5 to 8 hours based on research from Harvard. Probably going to be 8 as won't be long. We know that we need to be asleep by 9. The hours before midnight are worth twice the hours of sleep after midnight. How many of y'all knew Dr. Walter Strachan? Do you know Strachan? Strachan was at Loma Linda. He did a lot with thrash down at UCHI. Strachan would go to bed somewhere between 4:30 and 5 at night. He's a psychiatrist. Get up at 1 o'clock. He was getting those hours before midnight. See, the hours before midnight are worth twice the hours of sleep after midnight. Neil Nedley, you heard me talk about Neil Nedley. When Neil took pre-med in 3.5 years. He went to sleep at 9 o'clock and got up at 3 o'clock instead of what the other boys in pre-med were doing, going to sleep out 12, 1, 2. So he got how many hours sleep?
7.5.
So he went to bed at what time? Got up at 3. So how many hours did he get?
From 9 to midnight, you get twice as much.
Yeah, he got 6, but really like how much? 9. Yeah. And then when he went to med school, he did the same thing. The other thing that you have to have is that REM sleep that we talked about before. If you're waking up in the middle of the night, if you got prostate issues, work on them prostate issues. There's some things that you can do for prostate. One, quit drinking after 5 o'clock. Yes, you can do black seed oil. You can do patiarco. You can do saw palmetto. You can do pumpkin seed. The best thing I found is black seed oil and patiarco. They work tremendously for shrinking the prostate. But you want that REM sleep. And if you're waking up multiple times, when Marilyn and I went back to East Tennessee 19 years ago, the biggest thing we dealt with was stress and hormones, female hormones. And we still deal with stress and hormones, but what we deal with probably the most today is people can't sleep. And sleep's tough. What may work for you may not work for you. You take Benadryl, may put you to sleep. You take Benadryl, may not put you to sleep. It works on the pharmaceutical side too. Not everything works for everybody, but on the phytochemical side, the same way. And so you just got to try to find what works. But the problem is it may be like deodorant. You ever seen someone who uses deodorant and it quits working after 2-3 months and they got to get a different kind of deodorant? Well, the same thing can happen with sleep aids, and you just got to try a different one again. But sleep is a problem out there today. Harvard found a problem in COVID with sleep. People did what with COVID? They went home. They turned their bedroom into an office. It became the office. It became the dining room. It became the entertainment room. It became the library. And Harvard said the brain got confused on what the bedroom's for. Now, when you go in the bathroom, does your brain have any confusion what the bathroom's for? No. Harvard says the bedroom's for 3 things: sleeping, changing your clothes, and relationships with your spouse. That's it. No office, no reading, not a library, not a dining room. And when they started getting people to go back to what the bedroom is for, people started having a better time going to sleep. Neil Nedley. I keep going to Neil. Neil has some really good research out, as Dr. Agatha Thrash. Neil says a room needs to be dark. A room needs to be quiet. A room needs to be clean. Maybe you need to write some things down on a piece of paper and let that paper remember it. You ever go to bed and think, oh, I got to do this tomorrow and that tomorrow and that tomorrow, and you're worried about forgetting it? Well, jot it down on a piece of paper and set it on a nightstand, and in the morning, stick it back in your head. My problem of going to sleep, there is so much I want to do. When I worked in healthcare, there's times I'd have well over 300 employees to do what I want them to do. Well, I don't have that many now. But my brain still thinks that way. And so I just don't get done what I need to get done. And so Mary Lou goes, you need an ashwagandha? And she can tell. She knows me. Do you know Denzel? Sure you do. And so she'll give me an ashwagandha. And that will just calm me right down, slows my brain down, and I fall asleep. And so there are some natural things that you can use to help you sleep, but sleep is imperative. It's called the rest cure. If you read back in the early 1900s about curing diseases, one of the things they used was the rest cure. Think in your mind's eye of sanitariums years ago. They had the old rolling chairs with a big wheel in the front and a little wheel in the back. They'd roll them people out underneath a chair, underneath a tree, and let them just sit out there and rest. Rest is huge. Yes, sir. Ashwagandha. Yes, sir. Resting is important. If you're not sleeping, your body is not recovering. It's huge. It really is. And the most important is what? Trusting God. I say it last because it's the foundation. It is the foundation. But before we do something, we should be praying, as she said. As I work with people with all kinds of health issues, it's not the herbs, it's not the diet, it's not the exercise, it's not whatever that cures them. Only God does the curing. But you cannot tell your wife, I'm never going to eat again. I talked to God today and I told him, just to keep me alive, I'm going to never eat again. Will that work? No. God's going to say, listen, I gave you a brain, I gave you food, and I used them both. But when we sat down for supper tonight, there was prayer that God would bless it. If you have a question on what you need to do, I work with a lot of people with cancer. And I send them 3 pages of things that I found that can be very effective on addressing cancer. And I encourage them to just take that and read it over and pray and ask God what they should do. Guys, that's biblical. Do you agree? I believe it's biblical. If you sit down and you're going to buy you a car, do you pray? You sit down, you're going to buy you a house, you're going to pray? You're going to change jobs, or you're going to pray? Well, as you look at your health, starting a new lifestyle program, as you write the things down, sit and pray. Say, God, I'm looking at this. Do I need to do a fast? Do I need to do the juice? Do I need to do the rice diet? Do I need to do the raw? What do you want me to do? You believe he'll tell you? He will. He'll tell you. That's the most important. It really is. But as we go back and we look at the body, who does the body belong to? Yeah. So when you pray, ask God to heal his body. It's his. Now, you have to be a good steward and do what you need to do in lifestyle. But I promise you, you'll see significant improvement.
So before we close, though, we'd like you to stand. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for able to be here and learn more about your body that you've given us to use and to take care of. And Lord, I pray that we'll be able to use this knowledge to further your work and to improve our health, our lives, and most of all, be a representative for you. Lord, bless us as we go tonight. Give us a good night's rest, and we may come back tomorrow refreshed and ready for a new day of spending it with you and learning more about your body that you've created and the wonderful things that you've created for us. We ask these things in thy name. Amen.